Dr. Veltar stood before the massive viewing screen on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. His 6 eyes studied the strange signals coming from the third planet of this small star system. The radio waves were primitive, chaotic, and completely unlike anything the Zephyrian Empire had encountered before. "These creatures are barely past their Stone Age," Commander Zixon said with a dismissive wave of his 4 arms. "Look at their transmissions. Random noise, primitive music, and crude moving pictures. They have not even learned proper communication. Protocols?" Veltar was not so sure. Something about these signals troubled him. They showed a strange complexity hidden beneath their apparent simplicity. The beings on this planet, who called themselves humans, seemed to create art, tell stories, and express emotions in ways that defied standard xenobiological models. "Sir, we have completed our orbital survey," reported Lieutenant Kexenol from the navigation station. "The planet has one major landmass divided into several smaller territories. Population appears to be around 8 billion individuals. Their technology level is—" He paused, checking his instruments again. "Confusing, sir." "Confusing how?" Zixon demanded. "They have achieved nuclear fission and basic spaceflight, but they still use combustion engines for transportation. They have global communication networks, but also primitive projectile weapons. It is as if they developed unevenly, sir." Veltar made notes on his datapad. This was indeed unusual. Most species followed predictable technological progression. Patterns. First came basic tool use, then metallurgy, then energy manipulation, followed by spaceflight, and finally advanced physics. These humans seem to have skipped steps while advancing rapidly in others. Perhaps they are not the original inhabitants, suggested Science Officer Thurman. Maybe another species uplifted them partially before abandoning the project. "No," Veltar said, studying the biological scans. "They are clearly native to this world. Their physiology is perfectly adapted to local conditions. But their behavior. Patterns are ... He struggled to find the right words. Unprecedented. Meanwhile, millions of miles away on Luna, Lieutenant Jake Morrison was having the worst night shift of his military career. The new defense platform was supposed to be state-of-the-art, but half the sensors kept glitching, and the coffee machine had broken 3 hours ago. Jake rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the long-range scanner display. A small blip appeared at the edge of the solar system, then disappeared. Probably another asteroid, he thought, but then it appeared again, much larger this time, and moving in a way that made no sense. "What the hell?" Jake muttered, adjusting the scanner settings. The object was massive, roughly the size of Manhattan, and it was definitely artificial. Worse, it was heading directly toward Earth at a speed that should have been impossible for something that large. Jake reached for the emergency communication button, then hesitated. If he was wrong, if this was just some kind of sensor malfunction, he would be the laughingstock of Earth Defense Command. But if he was right— "Luna base to Earth Control," Jake said into his microphone. "I have a contact on long-range sensors, requesting immediate verification of tracking data." Back on the alien ship, Commander Zixon was growing impatient. "Enough? Observation. We follow standard protocol. Demonstrate our superiority, make the offer, and await their inevitable surrender. These creatures will be useful as laborers once properly educated." "Commander," Veltar said carefully, "I recommend extended observation. These humans show unusual psychological profiles. They appear to thrive under stress and display remarkable creativity under pressure. Perhaps we should study them more thoroughly before making contact." Zixon laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Doctor, you worry too much. We have conquered 47 worlds using the same methods. Superior technology always wins over primitive stubbornness. These humans will be no different." The commander turned to his communications officer. Prepare the standard first contact package. Full technological demonstration, followed by the surrender ultimatum. Make sure they understand the futility of resistance. On Earth, Admiral Lisa Parker was having her morning coffee when the call came in from Luna Base. She nearly dropped her mug when Jake Morrison's report reached her desk. A ship the size of a city, moving faster than anything humans had ever. Built, heading straight for Earth. Get me President Carter on the secure line, Lisa ordered her assistant. And wake up every department head we have. If this is real, we need to move fast. Within an hour, the most powerful people on Earth were staring at the same sensor data that had ruined Jake Morrison's quiet night shift. The object was definitely artificial, definitely massive, and definitely not human. Dr. Kevin Walsh, head of Earth's experimental weapons program, studied the readings with growing concern. The energy signatures are off the charts. Whatever powers that thing makes our best reactors look like campfires. Could it be peaceful? Asked President John Carter, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer. Unknown, sir, Admiral. Parker replied. But ships that big usually aren't built for exploration. As the alien vessel continued its approach, both species prepared for their first meeting. The Zephyrians with confidence born of countless easy victories, and the humans with the desperate hope of people who had never faced extinction before. Neither side understood how completely they had misjudged the other. The Zephyrians saw primitive, savages ripe for conquest. The humans saw an impossible threat that should have been beyond their ability to resist. Both were wrong. The first sign that humanity was no longer alone came at exactly 14:32 Greenwich Mean Time on a Tuesday. Every satellite in Earth's orbit suddenly went dark. Television broadcasts cut to static. Cell phone networks collapsed. The internet disappeared. In the span of 30 seconds, Commander Zixon watched the effect of the electromagnetic pulse with satisfaction. A simple demonstration, he told his bridge crew. Now they understand they are dealing with superior technology. In the emergency bunker beneath Washington, D.C., President John Carter stared at screens full of static and dead air. The secure military communications were still working, but everything else was gone. 8 billion people had just been cut off from the digital world they depended on. How long until we can restore communications? Carter asked. General Amy Rodriguez shook her head. Unknown, sir. Whatever they did, it fried everything with a circuit board. We are looking at months of repairs, maybe years. Sir, Admiral Lisa Parker interrupted. We are receiving a transmission on the emergency frequency. It is coming from the alien ship. The voice that filled the bunker was mechanical, clearly translated by some kind of computer system. But the message was crystal clear. People of Earth, you will surrender unconditionally within 72 hours. Resistance is futile. Accept our rule, and you will be allowed to live as servants of the Zephyrian Empire. Refuse, and your species will be eliminated. You have been warned. The transmission cut off, leaving the room in deadly silence. Well, Dr. Kevin Walsh said finally, at least they are direct. President Carter looked around the table at his advisors. Options, General? Rodriguez spoke first. Sir, we have to consider surrender. They just disabled our entire communications network without firing a shot. Our most advanced weapons are useless against technology like that. No, Admiral Parker said firmly. We do not surrender without a fight. That is not who we are. Who we are will not matter if we are all dead. Rodriguez replied. Dr. Walsh had been studying the data from the electromagnetic pulse. Actually, this might not be as hopeless as it looks. Yes, they have superior technology. But they also just showed us something important. What? Carter asked. They want us alive. If they could just destroy the planet, they would have done it already. Instead, They are trying to force us to surrender. That means they need us for something. Captain Ryan Bell was in the asteroid belt when the order came to return to Earth immediately. His ship, the New Frontier, was one of the few vessels far enough from Earth to avoid the electromagnetic pulse. The message from Earth Defense Command was brief. Return home. We are at war. Ryan looked at his small crew of miners and scientists. They had been searching for rare metals in the asteroid field, not preparing for an alien invasion. But they were all Earth had in deep space now. How long to get back to Earth? Ryan asked his navigator. At maximum burn, 18 hours, came the reply. Then fire up the engines. Time to go home. Back on the alien ship, Dr. Veltar was studying human responses to the ultimatum. What he saw worried him. Instead of panic and immediate surrender, the humans were organizing. Military units were mobilizing. Scientists were working around the clock. Leaders were making speeches about freedom and resistance. Commander, Veltar said to Zixon, I am observing unusual behavior patterns. Most species react to our ultimatum with either immediate surrender or chaotic panic. These humans are doing neither. What are they doing? Zixon asked. They appear to be preparing for war. Zixon laughed. Let them prepare. Their primitive weapons cannot penetrate our shields. Their slow ships cannot match our speed. This is like watching insects prepare to fight a hurricane. But Veltar was not convinced. He had spent his career studying alien species, and humans were unlike anything in the galactic database. They seemed to view impossible odds, not as a reason to surrender, but as a challenge to overcome. On Earth, the response to the alien ultimatum was swift and decisive. President Carter addressed the planet via emergency radio broadcasts. We have been given a choice between freedom and slavery, between dignity and submission, between hope and despair. The choice is clear. We will fight. Dr. Walsh was put in charge of a crash program to develop new weapons. We cannot match their technology, he told his team of scientists and engineers, but we do not have to. We just need to find ways to use what we have more effectively than they expect. Lieutenant Sam Torres was assigned to coordinate civilian resources for the war effort. She found herself amazed by how quickly people adapted. Factories that made cars started making ammunition. Computer programmers began working on military software. Even children started collecting scrap metal for the war effort. It is like the whole planet has become one big army, she reported to Admiral Parker. Colonel Beth Adams was given the most dangerous assignment of all. Find a way to get close enough to the alien ship to attack it. Their shields can stop missiles and energy weapons, she told her team of pilots. But maybe they cannot stop everything. As the 72-hour deadline approached, humanity worked with desperate efficiency. They knew they were outmatched. They knew the odds were impossible. But they also knew something the aliens had not counted on. Humans had never learned when to quit. Commander Zixon monitored human activities with growing confusion. Instead of preparing for surrender, they seemed to be preparing for a fight. They could not possibly win. It made no logical sense. Perhaps we should extend the deadline, suggested Dr. Veltar. Give them more time to see reason. Very well, Zixon agreed. 48 additional hours. A gesture of mercy before we end this. But as the alien commander would soon learn, giving humans more time to prepare was not an act of mercy. It was a mistake that would cost him everything. The extra 48 hours that Commander Zixon granted humanity out of mercy turned out to be the biggest mistake in Zephyrian military history. While the aliens waited patiently for human surrender, Earth's population worked with the focused intensity of a species facing extinction. Dr. Rebecca Stone had been working on medical nanobots when the aliens arrived. Tiny robots designed to repair damaged tissue and fight disease. Now, locked in her laboratory with no sleep for 3 days, she was modifying her creation for a very different purpose. The nanobots are designed to break down harmful cells. She explained to Dr. Walsh during one of their brief video conferences. With some modifications, they could break down anything made of metal or composite materials. How long would it take? Walsh asked. Normally, months of testing. But if we skip safety protocols and just build what we can double quotes, Rebecca rubbed her tired eyes. 72 hours, maybe less. Colonel Beth Adams was having her own breakthrough. Her team had been studying the alien ship's movement patterns, and they had noticed something interesting. They always approach from the same vector, she told Admiral Parker. Same speed, same trajectory. It is like they are following a textbook. That is useful how? Parker asked. Because textbooks do not account for suicide runs, Beth replied grimly. If we can modify our mining charges and position them along their approach route, you are talking about turning our people into guided missiles. I am talking about giving the aliens a surprise they will never forget. Engineer Danny Cooper was working on a different kind of surprise. The aliens had disabled Earth's satellite network, but they had not touched the old hardwired communication systems. Danny was busy connecting every radio dish, television antenna, and communication tower on Earth into one massive transmission array. What exactly are you planning? Lieutenant Sam Torres asked as she watched Danny work. The aliens are monitoring our communications, Danny explained, while rewiring a radio transmitter. They want to know what we are planning. So I am going to tell them exactly what they want to hear. Meanwhile, Captain Ryan Bell was pushing his ship harder than it had ever been pushed before. The new frontier was not built for combat, but Ryan was not planning to use it conventionally. His cargo hold was full of mining equipment, including some very special charges that were usually used to break apart asteroids. How many ships do we have coming back from the outer system? Ryan asked over the radio. 17 vessels. Admiral Parker replied. All civilian, all carrying mining or construction equipment. Good, Ryan said. The aliens probably think we are running away. Let them keep thinking that. Dr. Veltar was indeed monitoring human activities, and what he saw made him increasingly nervous. The humans were not behaving like any species he had studied before. Instead of preparing for surrender or attempting to negotiate, they seemed to be preparing for some kind of elaborate last stand. Commander, he reported to Zixon, human military activity has increased by 400%. They are moving massive amounts of equipment and personnel. I believe they are planning something. Of course they are planning something, Zixon replied dismissively. They are planning their surrender ceremony. Even primitive species understand the importance of ritual. But Veltar was not convinced. He had been studying human cultural broadcasts, trying to understand their psychology. What he found disturbed him. Human history was full of stories about small groups defeating larger enemies through cleverness and determination. They seemed to actually believe that being outnumbered made victory more glorious, not less likely. On Earth, the preparations were reaching their final stages. Dr. Stone had successfully weaponized her nanobots, though she was not sure they would. Work on alien materials. Colonel Adams had positioned her modified nuclear mines along the aliens' most likely approach route. Danny Cooper had completed his massive communication array and was ready to begin his deception campaign. President Carter gathered his military leaders for one final briefing. Are we ready? He asked. As ready as we can be, Admiral Parker replied. But sir, you need to understand. This plan only works if everything goes perfectly. If even one part fails, then we improvise, Carter said firmly. That is what humans do best. The plan was simple in concept, but incredibly complex in execution. First, Danny Cooper would broadcast false information about human military positions, making the aliens think Earth's defenses were weaker than they really were. Then, when the aliens moved in for what they thought would be an easy victory, they would fly directly into Colonel Adams' nuclear minefield. While the aliens were dealing with the mines, Captain Bell and his civilian fleet would attack the alien ship using their mining equipment as weapons. Dr. Stone's nanobots would be loaded into specially modified missiles that could penetrate the alien ship's hull. Once inside, the nanobots would begin eating the ship from within. It was a plan that required perfect timing, incredible luck, and a kind of desperate courage that only came from having nothing left to lose. "Sir," Lieutenant Jake Morrison reported, "from Luna Base, the alien ship is changing course. They are moving toward Earth orbit." "How long until they reach attack position?" Admiral Parker asked. 16 hours, ma'am." Parker nodded and picked up her communication device. "All stations, this is Earth Defense Command. Operation Longshot is now active. All units to final positions. Good luck, everyone." As humanity prepared for the most important battle in their species' history, Commander Zixon was feeling confident. The humans had extended their deadline by broadcasting what appeared to be surrender negotiations. Their military forces seemed disorganized and poorly positioned. Everything was proceeding according to standard Imperial protocol. "Begin final approach," he ordered his navigation officer. "Prepare bombardment systems. Once we demonstrate our firepower on a few of their cities, the remaining humans will surrender quickly." Dr. Veltar made one last attempt to warn his commander. "Sir, I strongly recommend caution. Human behavior patterns suggest they may be planning some form of resistance." "Doctor," Zixon said, with the patience of someone explaining something obvious to a child, "they are a primitive species with primitive weapons. What could they possibly do to threaten us?" It was a question that would be answered very soon, in ways that would shock the entire Zephian Empire and change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The attack began exactly on schedule. Commander Zixon ordered the first precision strikes on Earth's major cities at dawn, confident that a show of overwhelming force would break human resistance in hours rather than days. The first energy beam lanced down from the Eternal Dominion and struck downtown Tokyo. A section of the city simply vanished, turned to plasma in seconds. The second beam hit London, carving a perfect circle of destruction through the heart of the ancient city. "Cease fire," Zixon commanded after the third strike leveled part of New York. Now we wait for their surrender. But humanity's response was not what the Zephyrians expected. Instead of surrender broadcasts, every radio frequency on Earth erupted with a single message, repeated in dozens of languages. "Now!" Colonel Beth Adams pressed the detonation button from her hidden command bunker beneath the Sahara Desert. 50 nuclear mines that had been carefully positioned along the alien fleet's approach vector exploded simultaneously. The mines had been disguised as space debris and asteroids, invisible to the aliens' sophisticated but predictable scanning patterns. The explosions lit up space like a string of miniature suns. The Eternal Dominion rocked violently as electromagnetic pulses from the nuclear blasts overloaded its navigation systems. Secondary alien ships tumbled out of formation, their pilots blinded by the sudden flood of radiation and debris. "What was that?" Zixon shouted as emergency lights flickered across his bridge. "Nuclear detonation, sir," his science officer reported with shock in his voice. "Multiple simultaneous strikes. Our navigation systems are offline. Sensors are compromised." "Impossible," Zixon snarled. "Their primitive weapons cannot reach us at this distance." But even as he spoke, the second phase of humanity's attack was already beginning. Captain Ryan Bell pushed his modified mining ship to maximum speed as he led the civilian fleet toward the alien formation. Behind him, 16 other vessels followed, in tight formation. Cargo ships, mining platforms, and research vessels, all loaded with equipment that was never meant to be used as weapons. Remember, Ryan broadcast to his fleet, we only get one shot at this. Make it count. The Zephyrians detected the approaching human ships, but dismissed them as no threat. Their sensors showed the vessels were unarmed civilian craft, moving too slowly to be effective attack ships. They were wrong on both counts. Ryan's ship was carrying mining charges designed to shatter asteroids, explosives far more powerful than conventional military warheads. His cargo hold also contained Dr. Stone's weaponized nanobots, packed into specially modified delivery systems that looked like routine mining equipment. Target the largest ship, Ryan ordered. All vessels, begin final approach. On the alien flagship, Dr. Veltar watched the human ships approaching with growing alarm. Commander, I recommend we destroy those vessels immediately. Human behavior suggests this may be some form of attack. Attack? Zixon laughed, despite the chaos around him. With mining ships? Doctor, your paranoia is showing. But Veltar's paranoia proved to be deadly accurate. As the human ships closed to what should have been a safe distance, they suddenly accelerated far beyond their rated specifications. Danny Cooper had modified their engines with experimental boosters that would burn out after a single use, but would give the ships one burst of incredible speed. The first human ship slammed into the side of a Zephyrian destroyer and exploded with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The second ship punched through the destroyer's hull and detonated inside the ship's engine room. Within seconds, the entire destroyer was breaking apart. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Zixon screamed, but it was too late. The human ships were not trying to survive their attacks. They were guided missiles with human pilots, and they were hitting targets the aliens never thought to defend. Ryan Bell's ship was the last to attack. As the new frontier accelerated toward the alien flagship, Ryan armed Dr. Stone's nanobots and prepared them for release. The tiny robots were programmed to eat through any metal or composite material they encountered, and once they were released, inside the alien ship, they would begin consuming it from within. This is for Earth, Ryan said calmly as his ship struck the Eternal Dominion's hull. The impact drove the new frontier deep into the alien ship's armored side. As the mining charges exploded, they blasted a massive hole in the hull, and millions of nanobots poured into the alien ship like a metallic plague. Major Alex Turner watched the space battle from Earth's surface while coordinating the planet's ground-based defenses. All railgun batteries target the damaged ships, he ordered. Fire when ready. The railguns were another example of human ingenuity. Originally designed to launch supplies to orbital stations, they had been modified to fire projectiles at incredible speeds. The projectiles themselves were filled with more of Dr. Stone's nanobots, turning each shot into a weapon that could consume an entire ship. Direct hit on Target 3, reported one of the gun crews. Target is showing signs of structural failure. Across the battle zone, the alien ships were discovering that humanity's apparent technological inferiority had been deliberately misleading. The humans had not tried to match alien technology. They had used their own technology in ways no sane military planner would ever consider. Nuclear mines disguised as debris. Civilian ships turned into guided missiles. Medical nanobots converted into ship-eating plagues. Railguns loaded with microscopic weapons that could devour metal faster than any conventional explosive. Commander, Zixon stood on his damaged bridge and watched his fleet falling apart around him. 3 destroyers were gone. 2 more were being consumed by the strange human nanobots, and his flagship was suffering catastrophic system failures as the microscopic weapons spread through its hull. Sir, his communications officer reported, with terror in his voice, the nanobots are in the computer systems. They are eating our data storage units. We are losing life support in sections 4 through 12. Dr. Veltar stumbled over to his commander, his scientific equipment sparking. and failing around him. "Commander, we must retreat immediately. These humans, they fight like no species I have ever encountered. They turn everything into a weapon. They ... His words were cut off as another section of the ship's hull collapsed inward, consumed by billions of tiny robots that were designed to heal, but had been turned into instruments of destruction. "All ships," Zixon ordered, his voice shaking with shock and rage, "begin immediate withdrawal. Emergency jump to hyperspace." But even retreat would not be easy. The human nanobots had damaged the navigation systems on most of the remaining alien ships. Some vessels managed to escape, but others were stranded in Earth's solar system, slowly being eaten alive by weapons that should never have existed. As the alien fleet fled or died, humanity stood victorious but stunned. They had won a battle. They should have lost against an enemy that should have been invincible. But the victory had come at a terrible cost, and the war was far from over. The battle raged for 18 hours. What had started as humanity's desperate last stand had become something no one expected, a prolonged fight between two species that refused to give up. Commander Zixon managed to restore partial systems to his flagship, but the nanobots were still eating through critical components faster than his repair crews could replace them. 3 of his destroyers were completely gone, consumed from within by the tiny human weapons. 2 more were crippled and drifting. "Status." "Report," he demanded. "We have lost 60% of our fleet," his tactical officer reported grimly. "The remaining ships are all showing signs of nanomachine infection. Our weapons are at 30% capacity. How is this possible?" Zixon raged. "They are primitives with primitive weapons." Dr. Veltar, working frantically to analyze the human nanobots, looked up from his damaged instruments. "Commander, these are not primitive weapons. This technology is incredibly advanced. Just ... different. They did not try to match our energy, shields or armor. Instead, they created something that ignores both." On Earth, Admiral Lisa Parker was coordinating humanity's final gambit from a bunker that was shaking apart around her. The alien counterattack had been devastating. Half of Earth's major cities were burning. The railgun batteries were running out of ammunition. Most of the civilian fleet was gone. But Dr. Walsh had one last card to play. "The lunar mining operation," he explained to President Carter over a radio link filled with static. "We can destabilize the moon's orbit just enough to create a gravitational slingshot effect, if we time it right." "You are talking about using our moon as a weapon?" Carter asked. "I'm talking about turning the entire solar system into a weapon," Walsh replied. The plan was insane, even by human standards. By detonating massive charges at key points on the lunar surface, they could alter the moon's orbital trajectory just enough to create a gravitational cascade. Asteroids that had been positioned months earlier as part of the mining operation would be flung toward the alien ships at speeds that would make them impossible to intercept. Engineer Danny Cooper volunteered for the suicide mission to manually override the lunar facility's safety systems. "Someone has to do it," he told Colonel Beth Adams. "And I know these systems better than anyone." "Danny," Beth said quietly, "you know you are not coming back from this." "I know," Danny replied with a sad smile. "But maybe my kids will have a future because of it." As Danny launched toward the moon in a small transport ship, the final phase of the battle was beginning. The remaining alien ships had regrouped and were preparing for one last assault on Earth. They knew they were dying, but they intended to take humanity with them. Colonel Adams led the last wave of human fighters in a desperate attempt to protect the lunar operation. Her squadron was outnumbered 10-1, but they fought with the fury of people defending everything they had ever loved. "This is Thunder Leader," she broadcast to her pilots. "Stay on those destroyers. Do not let them get close to the moon. The space around Luna became a maze of explosions and debris as human fighters threw themselves against alien ships that were individually far more powerful. But humanity had learned something during the long battle. Alien technology was superior, but alien tactics were predictable. The Zephyrians fought like a species that had never lost a war. They followed established patterns, used proven strategies, and relied on their technological advantage to carry them to victory. Humans fought like a species that had been losing wars for thousands of years and had learned to win anyway. They improvised, adapted, and used every dirty trick their violent history had taught them. Danny Cooper reached the lunar mining station as the battle raged overhead. The facility was heavily automated, but the safety systems required manual override for the kind of massive detonation he was planning. Earth Control, this is Danny, he reported as he worked frantically at the control panels. I am in position. Beginning override sequence. Danny, Admiral Parker's voice came through the static. We are reading massive energy buildups from the alien ships. Whatever you are going to do it now. Copy that, Danny replied. Tell my family I love them. He pressed the detonation button. The explosions that followed were visible from Earth as a brilliant flash on the lunar surface. The moon shuddered and shifted in its orbit, creating gravitational waves that rippled through the solar system. Asteroids that had been carefully positioned by human mining operations suddenly accelerated to incredible speeds, flung toward the alien fleet by forces beyond human control. Commander Zixon watched in horror as chunks of rock the size of mountains hurled toward his fleet faster than his ships could dodge. His weapons could destroy individual asteroids, but there were too many of them, coming from too many directions. All ships emergency jump to hyperspace, he ordered. Sir, our jump engines are compromised by the nanobots, his navigator reported. We cannot achieve stable hyperspace entry. The first asteroid struck an alien destroyer and vaporized it instantly. The second one clipped the flagship and sent it tumbling out of control. A third one missed entirely, but created a debris field. That made maneuvering impossible. Dr. Veltar made one final transmission as his ship broke apart around him. Warning to all Zephyrian forces. Do not engage the humans. They are not what they appear to be. They turn everything into a weapon. They fight with the fury of the desperate and the cunning of the mad. Avoid this system at all costs. The transmission cut off as the Eternal Dominion finally succumbed to the combination of nanobots and gravitational forces that had torn it apart. In the aftermath, Earth was left scarred but victorious. The lunar facility was gone, along with Danny Cooper and thousands of other heroes. Half the planet was in ruins, but humanity had survived. President Carter's address to the survivors was broadcast on emergency radio frequencies to every corner of the globe. Today we learned something about ourselves. When faced with impossible odds, we do not surrender. When confronted with superior technology, we do not despair. Instead, we adapt. We improvise. We find ways to turn our weaknesses into strengths and our desperation into determination. Dr. Walsh spent the following months reverse engineering captured alien technology, amazed by what he found. Their technology is incredibly advanced, he reported to the Reconstruction Committee. But it is also incredibly specialized. They never learned to think outside established patterns because they never had to. The intercepted Zephyrian communications told the full story of humanity's victory. The aliens had issued a galaxy-wide warning about Earth, classifying humans as a species too dangerous to engage. They spoke of creatures who could weaponize anything, who fought harder when outnumbered, and who refused to accept defeat even when faced with extinction. Lieutenant Sam Torres, now promoted to major, was put in charge of analyzing the alien warnings. They are calling us the most dangerous species in the galaxy. she reported with amazement. Not because we are the strongest or most advanced, but because we are unpredictable. As humanity began to rebuild and expand into space using captured alien technology, they carried with them the reputation that had saved their world. They were the species that could not be conquered because they never learned when to quit. The species that turned medical nanobots into ship-eating plagues and mining equipment into guided missiles. The Zephyrians had paid the ultimate price for underestimating human determination. They had learned too late that the most dangerous weapon in the universe was not superior technology or overwhelming numbers. It was the refusal to surrender, no matter what the odds.